And we're live. That went live amazingly quickly. And on today's show, we have the amazing Roz Morris, who is an author in the best tradition of this show. So before we start, could you sort of say what kind of books you write and what kind of books you enjoy, just in general? It's a little start to the show.
Oh, I absolutely love stories. I write quite literary fiction, but it's literary fiction that has a really strong story ethic, because the books I most like to read have got a really strong story and characters who just grab hold of you. And then along the way, they've also got qualities of nuance and resonance that make you think, oh my goodness, there's more in here. But I'm absolutely fascinated by the story and the characters. So that's what I aim for in my writing, and that's what I most love to read. And the novels that I've picked today are all like that. Yes. And I've also written a travel memoir. That's something I'm going to do more of. And the other thing that I've written is books on how to write, because I'm also a writing coach, and I simply love to analyze how we do what we do, what works on readers, why they love it so much, what doesn't work, because I work with quite a lot of authors. So I've put those insights into various books as well.
Okay. Shall we start off with your first pick then?
My first pick, this is a really unusual one. It's called Night Work by Thomas Glavinic, he might be. I think he's Austrian. This is a very strange idea, but it's right in my ballpark. The idea is a guy wakes up one morning and no one else is in the world. The electricity's working, but there are no cars outside. There are birds and animals and things, but no people. And it's a great mystery. He first of all tries to figure out why, and if all the people have gone, and he can't figure out why. And it is just what he does in this situation. It's incredibly strange, incredibly moving, because you can really put yourself in his shoes. One of the things I really like to do is to go for walks in the countryside. And I love to be in a place where there's no one else there, and I feel like it's just me. And I love riding horses, if it's just me and my horse, but no one else. But this book made me really think about what that might mean. It's really strange, really engaging.
Okay, well, that sounds kind of interesting, really. Should we go on to the next book?
The next one,
it's another strange one. Bridge by
Iain Banks. You can probably see this is a very old edition, because I've had it for years. I've reread it. The basic idea of this is it's got two narratives. One is kind of in present day Scotland and a bit in the character's past, and the rest is in a sort of coma world, because the narrator at the beginning has a car crash on the Forth Bridge and ends up in a coma. So some of the narrative is in the world where he's living in a coma, which is it's very strangely derived from his real life. It's all based on a bridge, which obviously is the Forth Bridge, which is a very unusual setting for any kind of fantasy world, which this is. It's an alternate world, alternate reality, kind of dual narrative kind of book. And you see these parallels between his real world life and what he's going through now. And there are beautiful links between them. At one point, the character in the coma world turns on the TV and he sees a man in a hospital bed wired to monitors, and he thinks, oh, poor man, I feel a bit strange when I see that. And that's him. So there are just one or two little calls from one world to the other. It's really strange and wonderful and haunting. And it just stayed with me. After that, I really wanted to write a book where two worlds call to each other, but really unusual worlds.
So does that bring us nicely onto the next book, which is written by a certain Roz Morris?
This is My Memories of a Future Life. It was partly inspired by The Bridge with the other world, but also by stories about people going to other lives by hypnosis. And I've always been fascinated by these. The things that we might have buried in us or that we might make up on the spot, or that anyway, there's somewhere we need to go. And I thought, what if you didn't go to the past, but you went to the future, your next life? What would you be seeing? You know, would you be seeing little things like the man sleeping in the hospital bed and watching himself and thinking, poor guy, and there's a real tug there. And that's something I really wanted to explore, and it came out as My Memories of a Future Life, where we've got a character who goes to a future life. She's living it, and she's seeing things that are coming from her life now. And are they real? Are they things she needs to sort out? Can she figure out what to do in her own life now?
Yeah, it seems like you've got there's a theme of consciousness in a lot of the books you write and you like. Would you say that's true?
That's true, actually. Yes. I like ideas of reality and who we really are, and how we feel alive as well.
Yeah.
That's something in My Memories of a Future Life. I'm really interested in the things that make us feel big and emotional. And in My Memories of a Future Life, the character is a musician, and she has a mysterious injury that means she can't play. And while she can't play, she can't live. The reason she goes to another life is she's trying to find a cure for this, and she finds all sorts of other strange things that she needs to sort out. But that's got the sense of aliveness, and the consciousness angle comes in because it's sort of how we really where we are really ourselves.
Yeah. So where was this book in your writing journey? Was this one of your first books you wrote, or was it one you've written more recently?
It's the first novel that I wrote for myself, because before that I'd been a ghostwriter. I was writing novels for other people, and I'm not going to pull any of those up today because I can't tell you what they are. But that's how I really learned my trade, and I also how I learned what I wanted to be myself, because I'd written a lot as others. And then after a while I thought, well, I wouldn't do it like that if it was for me. And from that I gradually thought, well, the dreams I'm going to follow are these slightly strange ones, because they're the kind of books I respond to.
Okay, shall we go on to the next book, which is
is
Bel Canto by Ann Patchett?
Yes. This is absolutely gorgeous. It continues the theme of classical music, actually, which comes from My Memories of a Future Life, because the character is a classical pianist. And this is about classical opera singing. The premise of the book is a party in an ambassadorial residence in a South American country. You never find out which. And they've invited this opera singer, and she gives her aria, and then the lights go out and the place is stormed by some rebels who take everybody hostage. And the narrative begins with that, and it ends when the siege ends. But during that time, it's set in the embassy, and it's just how they all live in there with each other, and it becomes very strange. The music becomes something that draws emotions out of people, makes them fall in love, makes them question who they are and how they've lived before. It's a very strange force, this amazing music, and it all comes from the voice of this opera singer. I found that incredibly powerful. It's a very beautiful concept, I think. It's almost like the Garden of Eden developed in this awful situation. These people who, first of all, came in to kill people and to do violent things, and by the end they're all completely changed by being just all in there together in this beautiful house. And it's just full of tension and humanity, just getting to the real root of what people are. Romance too, it's very romantic. I'm very, very romantic at heart. I just love stories where people put their defenses down and discover people they connect with in very unexpected ways, and this has got it all. And if I open it, I'll fall into it again. I absolutely love it.
You better put it aside so that
I have. I start reading a bit.
Okay, shall we go on to the next book before we get tempted to get lost in reading Bel Canto, okay?
Yes.
Which
Now,
is Daisy Jones. Yeah.
Daisy Jones and the Six by Taylor Jenkins Reid. Now, I can't show you this because I read it on ebook, but
Yeah.
it's music again, but rock
Yeah.
music. And I've always loved rock band novels where you just get into the nitty gritty of how music is made, the way people interact in the studio in this amazing creative environment, but also often quite violent and vehement. There's often a lot of fighting, and there's so much life in rock music and rock band stories. And I've actually read a lot of them, and many of them don't have the kind of punch that would actually exist in a real band situation. I've been in a band myself, so I do know a little bit about this. I've read a lot of rock band novels that aren't convincing about either the band and the way they work, and aren't convincing about music, because music is very visceral. It's very emotional. It can be violent, it can be soothing, but often a lot of writers can't write about this. Ann Patchett with Bel Canto can, and so does Taylor Jenkins Reid. She does a brilliant job of making you feel these people really do live for music. They live through music, they live by music. It's all in there. And it's a terrific story, and she's told it like a series of interviews from Rolling Stone magazine with this band. It's a very easy read. It's a lot of fun, and the characters are a lot of fun. I thoroughly enjoyed it.
That's good. Okay, shall we go on to the next book then, which is also by this Roz Morris person?
It is by this Roz Morris, and this is my latest. This is my rock band novel.
Ooh, you've been very clever with the ordering here, I see.
I like to tell a story. This is called Everest, and it's got two elements, actually. It's got music and it's got mountains. I'll explain how these go together. In this novel, there's a man who's got lost climbing Mount Everest. He's fallen into a glacier and his body can't be retrieved. And the people who knew him are still waiting for him to come out. And so is the rest of the world, because he was a rock star.
Yeah.
And they are just waiting until he comes out again, and they wait decades and their lives change, but he is still there, and he's also still available for everyone to see on videos where he's beautiful and he's singing, and he's still singing the songs of when they were young, and on records, and his voice is preserved exactly as it was. And until he comes, they will not ever rest.
It's in the title. Yeah. Okay, shall we go on to the next book, which is The Interestings? I like the title itself by Meg Wolitzer. Is it Wolitzer?
Meg Wolitzer, I think. I've never heard her say it. I would dearly love to meet her, because she's written such an interesting book.
Yeah.
This is about a group of people who meet at college. They all come from different backgrounds when they go there. They aren't people who would necessarily have known each other otherwise, but they're bound together for the rest of their lives by just the way they brought things out of each other. They keep in touch for decades. Their circumstances change and everything, but they're all just glued together by this formative period they spent together. They're tethered by that time. And that's what I loved about it. There are complex tensions, ways they make each other feel sometimes loved, sometimes cast out, sometimes betrayed. All of humanity is in here, in this small group of people who are just bound together. Their expectations were formed by the relationships they formed there. It's very much a character's book, but it does have a plot. It does continue to pull you along in the narrative. Everything is so beautifully written as well. The way she describes people, you can smell them. And it's a very difficult thing to describe a character in a way that makes you feel you know what they're like. You're in the room with them. You could touch them. They're so real. And that's what I love about it.
So would you say that because you were a ghostwriter as well as a normal writer, you say you're attracted to technically well-written books and like with very good characters in them. Is that something else that you've embodied in this list, so to speak?
I suppose I have. Yes, I am. I like people who feel very very truthfully drawn. Because I like writers who are interested in all the various layers of a person. The Interestings does this really well. It sort of goes through all the things we don't necessarily know we think and feel.
Yeah.
And we've got to have them worked out. And other people get irritated by them, but they live with us, they get on with it. And I love that really forensic way of looking at why people do what they do, why they don't understand what they do, why they don't understand what they want, and they pursue things that they think they want, and actually it's not what they want at all. I love that complexity, and if it's portrayed in the right way, it can make you really engage with the character. It makes you really curious about them. It makes you really concerned for them, and you find this in real life. And good writing, I feel, goes by the principles of what interests you in real life. So I'm always very interested in people who have got a bit of vulnerability in them, a thing they haven't quite worked out. And the books I love also do that. They make me feel like that about the characters.
Okay. Shall we go on to the next book, which is going back a bit? Requiem for a Wren by Nevil Shute.
I love all of Nevil Shute. I could have chosen any novel by him.
Yeah.
This one is about a soldier who returns home after the war. He's been maimed in an accident. He doesn't particularly want to go home, and when he arrives home in Australia, which is actually where Nevil Shute came from, he finds his family in complete turmoil because a young lady who they hired as a housekeeper has just committed suicide, and she's in the bedroom there. And he's instantly plunged into this very difficult situation, and he realizes she's someone he's been looking for years, because he was actually the girlfriend of his brother at one point, and his brother's dead, and he uncovers her story and what he can of them. It's very sad, it's very fragile, and it involves a lot of action in wartime, where people were doing things that they would end up horribly regretting because they were pushed into an impossible situation. It is really empathetic and appreciative of how difficult war is, and how normal people are just put into situations that break them, and they have to kind of somehow crawl back to life. And that's what this character is doing. He spends a lot of time with people who are dead and times that are gone, and he himself actually has to find a way to live again. And that's something I'm really interested in, as you might have seen with some of my own books. With Everest, people are trying to find out how to live again. And with My Memories of a Future Life, she's trying to find out how to live again. And Nevil Shute does this so poignantly. He's got such humanity in his characters. You absolutely adore them.
Okay, and I think the next book is probably slightly different. Into Thin Air, a personal account of Everest disaster by John Krakauer.
Krakauer, I think I say Krakauer.
Butchering people's names.
Sorry, I picked difficult ones for you. I should have sent a pronunciation guide.
Oh no, it's fine. I'm sure you can go onto Amazon. There's a pretty little button somewhere on Amazon that you can find out how it's pronounced.
Yes, you probably can, or Wiki. Anyway, this is the definitive account of what it's like to climb Mount Everest, and beautifully written. I read so many accounts of climbing Everest and many of the other high altitude mountains as well, in order to write my own Everest, because there was no way I was going to do it myself.
Yeah, don't blame you there. Yeah.
But having been a ghostwriter, one of the things I got very good at was researching things I wasn't brave enough to do myself.
Yeah.
And this is one of them. It is not only stunning in terms of the thrilling things that he does, but it's also a deep appreciation of the mystery and the magic of the place. at one point he describes walking through a kind of avenue of giant glaciers, and they fall over at various points. They might fall over while you're walking past them, and underneath there are big cracks that you step over, and you can see down into bottomless black. And landscapes like that are just unbelievable places for humans, and they are just on the outside of our civilized world. It is absolutely incredible. It's an incredible journey. And then, of course, you have the kind of people who are driven to climb the mountains. That's another subject all of its own. It's fascinating. But yes, I absolutely love this book, and the writing is beautiful too.
Okay. And let's go to a very different kind of book, but similar vein, Notes from a Small Island by Bryson.
Yes, from big places to small places. This is probably Bill Bryson's first travelogue, and it's so good. He's from Canada, I think, or it might be America.
I think he's from America, actually. He says.
Okay, but he's not from the UK. However,
no,
he has written this love letter to all the things that he loves in the UK, and he has such fun just going to little places and enjoying them.
Yeah,
and he makes you enjoy them too. There's one point where he goes climbing in the Lake District, and he gets exhausted climbing a mountain, and he's quite bad-tempered about that, but very amusingly bad-tempered. And then he gets to the top, and he finds people sort of sitting above the cloud level, loads of people eating sandwiches, and he says, I just love this. It's just so bizarre, and it's full of surprising, very human moments like that. And he's very good on people too. He's fascinated by people. Another absolutely hilarious bit is where he takes a ride in a Glasgow taxi. And if you ever want to know how to make the Glaswegian accent look right on the page, read this, because he's got it. All you have to do is read it out. And in fact, you won't get to the end of a sentence because you will be painfully laughing. It's lovely. It's a really lovely book.
Yeah, I think the only reason I knew... Well, I'm pretty sure he's American. I'll probably totally disprove when we look after the show. But he wrote his follow-up book was Notes from a Big Island or a Big Land or something, a big country.
He's done quite a few, yes, all with his trademark, just curiosity and humour. Yeah, he's great.
Okay, well, should we have a book by this mysterious Roz Morris?
Yep, this is my version of Notes from a Small Island. Well, sort of. It's called, hang on, can you see it? Not Quite Lost, Travels Without a Sense of Direction. It is a travel memoir. It is humorous. It started because I keep loads of notebooks. I sort of can't go for a day without seeing something I want to write down. And I had a particular notebook that I kept whenever we went away anywhere. And I would use it to write just anything that happened that I wanted to remember. It was actually an old-fashioned visitor's book, a leather-bound visitor's book, where people were supposed to write, had a lovely time, the trifle was scrumptious. And my mother-in-law had been given this, and she said, I'm not going to use it. Can you use it? And I thought, oh, that is a wonderful writer's notebook. So it lives in the suitcase, and it goes away whenever we go away. Now, I am not an adventurous traveller. I love staying in this country because there's just so much to enjoy. And also, you don't have to plan very much. Sling a suitcase in the car and go. And I kept this diary of all sorts of things that happened. And we were starting our first night of a holiday, and I got the book out to write in it. And I said, oh, here's that time when the car window got stuck, when we were driving across the moors in Lincoln in the winter, and we were freezing cold, and we got really bad-tempered with each other. We didn't know if the car window would ever go up again, and what would we do? Yeah. And my husband said, put that in a book. And I said, well, yes, it'll go in a novel one day. And he said, no, write those in a book, make a book out of those. And I found I'd got loads of stories about just wacky things we've done. There's another time when there were loads of instances of getting lost, always getting lost. And there was a time when I read about some people who freeze dead bodies to bring them back to life in a future generation.
Cryogenics or whatever it's
Cryonics. They call it cryonics, actually.
Cryonics.
Like cryogenics.
I can't pronounce it. I can't read or pronounce anything.
Anyway, I went to visit these people to see just what they did. And I'd written a whole diary piece about it in this book that I'd forgotten. And so I wrote that up, because what I found was that they were so interesting and so sort of optimistic and focused on the future. They were like people from a science fiction novel, and I loved that. So I wrote about that. I wrote about a time I got I got a job as a dancer one day, as you do, on an advert, and we rehearsed at night in Liverpool Street Station, and it was a flash mob advert for T-Mobile, and it was just such a weird adventure to be there, and there were commuters coming out at 3 a.m. and finding us doing our dancing. And so I wrote about that. I wrote about my family home. I found out it had been knocked down, and so I thought I have to write an obituary for it. All these walls that have been lost and the memories in them, and I ended up writing sort of a little obituary for my family's time there too. So it's got all sorts of very personal stories, but I hope to make them amusing. People seem to quite like it anyway.
Okay. Did you find it hard to write a travel book? Because I've heard anecdotally from people that it's not hard to write a travel book. It's hard to write a good travel book, because it can turn into a bit of a laundry list of, then I went here and then I went there and then I went there, sort of thing.
Yes, you have to really think about your reader and what they want, and it's the same with memoir as well, because that book crosses into memoir because everything's very personal, and the things mattered to me because I was amused by them, or they were going to be landmarks in my life. But I then had to find a way to write them so that the reader would feel they were important. And what I did was, in most cases, I found I found a bigger resonance in them. So with the dance advert, really that was a story about how I kind of faked it till I made it, because I got picked for this advert because I went to an audition for a laugh, and then when they phoned me up and said, "Oh, you've been picked," and I said, "I'm not really a dancer, you can't mean me." And they said, no, we want you. And then I thought, oh my god, I've got to do this. And so I was then having to really pull myself up and think, oh, I've now got imposter syndrome, really major imposter syndrome. And I thought for the whole of the rehearsal time I was going to be thrown out, and this also led me to reassess things in my life in a bigger way too, because that was the turning point when I started by thinking I could really write books for myself instead of just ghostwriting. And during that time, during the time of the rehearsals, there were other people I got to know there who were having a similar kind of revelation that this was something they thought they couldn't do, and because they could, and they surprised themselves, they actually changed their life path. And so that's the kind of thing you have to look for, is that there's often a bigger story underneath that's more universal and more connectable, and people can just find something of themselves in it. So the laundry list is what you start with. Actually, you have to, well, I did this, and then I did this, and then I did this, and then you look for something that makes it bigger than just what you did. There's often something bigger you did inside, and that's where you start getting a story that everyone can go along with and get something out of.
Okay. Shall we move on to the next book? Which is Underland, A Deep Time Journey by Robert Macfarlane.
This is, I think, the ultimate in exploring. It's Robert Macfarlane has been a nature writer, travel writer, writer of kind of the wilderness for many years. But he's also very keen on underground spaces. And this is his book of underground explorations. There are breathtaking places here, but also his writing is breathtaking as well, because what he gets out of them makes him a divine guide for this kind of adventure. Some examples. One of the places he goes to is a defunct salt mine off, I think, the northeast coast of England. And it's now used for experiments in nuclear physics because it's shielded so well.
Yeah.
And he talks about going through these tunnels, and some of them are under the sea. This is so remote, so wild. Some of them are under the sea, and you can see salt crystals in the walls. And there's also darkness. If there's a room where there isn't a light, it's dark. It is so dark. You have never seen darkness like it. And as I was reading that chapter, I was eating some very dark chocolate with sea salt crystals in it. And I can recommend pairing those two things, because what was going on in my mouth, the darkness and the salt crystals, was what was also going on in my mind and heart from the text of this book. It is amazing. And another amazing place he goes to is a hole in a glacier. And it's been made very gradually over eons by water trickling down, and it's made a kind of horn shape down into the ice. And as you go down, you see striations of the layers of the ice year upon year upon year. And there's something about the way he describes it. It sucks you into all that time. I think it's Logline is a deep time journey. It is absolutely magical.
And it sounds like you can now put little post-it notes for what to eat with reading every chapter in that book. Now you've got like a companion guide. It's like with the wine that goes with a particular meal. You've now got like eat salt, sea salt chocolate with this particular chapter. And I don't know about the glaciers, foxes glacier mints or something with the other one. I don't know.
Perhaps or a nice cold glass or something.
Yes. Okay, well, shall we move on to the next book, which is The Ring of Brightwater Trilogy by Gavin.
Again, my copies, I can't find them. I didn't read those on ebooks. I have got them somewhere. But yes, Ring of Brightwater by Gavin Maxwell was made into a film about a nice man who has otters and has adventures with them. And I saw that when I was a kid, and it was charming, but I thought the books would be just about that, twee stories about otters, and I wasn't very interested. But for some reason, I picked up the book one day. In fact, I picked up the sequel, which is The Rocks Remain. Ring of Brightwater is the first, The Rocks Remain is the second, and Ravenseek, Thy Brother, is the third. And they're all in this collection. But there was something about the writing. It was... Gavin Maxwell just had this immense love for the landscape of Scotland, remote Scotland where he lived, this funny ramshackle house that he sort of renovated as a crofter's cottage or something, or a farmhouse, and he just lined it with wood and put stoves in and made it into somewhere where he felt at home. And he had animals there who he just loved spending time with, otters particularly, and he describes them all with immense warmth. He gives them real dignity, which is a hard thing to do when you're describing an animal, because a lot of people describe them as pets. They're just our sweet thing that loves me and does what I want. He doesn't. He describes them as beings, all of themselves, with their own intelligence, their own way of doing things. At one point in Ring of Brightwater, he describes some pets he had before he decided on otters. He bought something like a lemur, I think, from Harrods, when you could do that. And it was an abominable animal. He kept it in a London flat, which of course is an awful thing to do. He realised that. He realised his mistake. This is another thing. He was full of humility. And this animal just tore the place apart, tore him apart. It used to sit on the picture rail and hiss at him, which is what he deserved, and he acknowledges that. But he just really wanted some connection with wildness, and eventually he got it through otters, which he found, although they were wild and you couldn't necessarily keep them as pets in your house, there was something about the times he could spend with them. Like he could go for walks and the otters would come with him. At one point he describes going swimming in the sea, and he just goes and paddles in the shore, and the otters swim out and come back and swim out and come back. And he said there's such joy in the way they were all just doing this thing that was fun for them and natural for them. And there's great humor as well, because he describes how often when he went out with his otters and played in the sea, they did a thing which he called drying. He said there's a thing about being dried by an otter, which is that the otter comes out soaking wet and then it rubs itself on your clothes, and soon you are soaking wet and it is perfectly dry. And there's the way he describes this is just with surprise and love. There's also a lot of sadness in the book too, because things start to go wrong. It's a very harsh environment. At one point his cottage catches fire, and imagine the heartbreak of your house catching fire, especially a house that you've built really from bits of brick, scraps, and you've cobbled together, and it's been this place that wasn't necessarily easy to live in, but it was really your heart place. And there is a lot of heartbreak and sadness in the book too, and you feel also there's a certain loneliness that he has, and that he relates a lot more to these animals whose language he doesn't even speak, but he relates more deeply to them than he does to other people. They're just wonderful.
Okay, so we've got the next book is by this Roz Morris. Okay, I don't know why I can't pronounce your surname anymore, but I'm guessing with the theme that this is somehow related to the last couple of books.
It is. This is it's called Lifeform 3. It's set in a future world where all the countryside is gone, and one piece of countryside remains because it was the grounds of a stately home, and it's opened as a theme park. And the narrator is an artificial human who works in the theme park, and his mind is wiped every few weeks or so just to make him more productive and to give him new programming. And he wakes up with no memory of much. And the first night, he doesn't switch off like all the others do. He starts dreaming, and he dreams he's riding a horse. And he becomes really grabbed by this. He thinks there's something really pulling at me here. What is this? What is this dream? Next night he dreams again, and he starts to explore, and he finds pieces of the past and pieces of his past. And the other thing that this does is it puts my love of horses into a book. When I was a kid, I loved pony stories because I loved the relationships and the adventures and the really hard-won partnerships between human and horse. They're always hard-won. And I've had horses of my own, I still do, and I know what that's like. And I really wanted to put that into a book. And so I thought, what if I put this artificial human in a situation where he had a memory of riding horses and really wanted to recapture that? And he finds a horse and starts to tame it. And he's also in a world where all the humans are really spending all their time, it's effectively on their phones. But I wrote this long before people had got so addicted to phones. But I saw it was going to come, actually, that we were getting more surrounded by artificial intelligence and machines and things that sort of let us watch things but not really do things and not really live things. It's that idea of living again. Where do you feel most alive? And the android gets programming, and he has to kind of work out the world and has to work out how to fit in with the rules, but he also wants to really learn how to train a horse. And he's got this kind of innate thing still there that he did it once before, and he dearly wants to do it again. And the other thing that this book has that I really wanted to write about is my own love of old places, because in riding I've ridden around old country estates that they were once like Downton Abbey or something like that, just beautiful valleys and woods. And now we're very lucky that in England they are owned by the National Trust, and so everyone can go there. But it's a resource that we are very lucky to have. And I'm always aware of how when I'm out there, I'm treading on the past. That underneath my feet are old roads that people used to walk on, and there were people who belonged there, and what were their lives like? And I started to think, how will we use that in the future? And there I was on a horse who connects you to everything natural. You know, the weather makes one day completely different to another when we're on a horse. They are so in tune with everything that's going on around them. And yet humans now are less in tune with that. We're more just, we don't trust our senses. We don't even use them sometimes. So there are all sorts of things I wanted to explore with this book, and the AI aspects were the reason I set it in the future as well, because I could play with that, play with how people become more and more just swallowed by machines, and that there was a whole world out there that was still there, but might disappear for good if we didn't take care of it.
Okay. Shall we switch on to the next book before we have a whole load of the Roz Morris books coming, which is Steering the Craft by Ursula K. Le Guin. I think that's how it's pronounced.
Steering the Craft is a slim volume of just inspirational things you can do if you're a writer, and writers of any level will enjoy it. So if you're just starting, you'll find things you can do and things you can relate to. If you're an old hand and you just want a fresh guide to sort of guide you through new things to do, it's good for that too. There are little exercises, passages to illustrate how things work, her commentaries, and most of all is the real pleasure of spending time with a master craftsman at work. And she talks about how she loves it. You feel her in the presence of a really graceful mind who thinks this is life. Actually, life on the page is a real worthwhile life. And there's the joy of creation, the joy of working at it to get it right. Any artist would find something to love about this book.
Yeah. Yeah, I need to get back into writing. I haven't written a book since 2018, so maybe that's one I should pick up. But now we're on to a long slew of books by the same author, this Roz Morris, all about writing craft. So hopefully these are in the right order. It was a bit like they seem to be the wrong way round, but I'm guessing you put them in this order for a reason, or it's just an accident.
Oh, that was an accident, I'm afraid. And I've sold out of most of my copies. The only one I've got here today is this one, which is the workbook version of the primary book.
Actually, I think it's that one.
That's the primary book, which is the whole series is called Nail Your Novel, and there's a book on just general procedure and process, which I wrote because I've mentored a lot of writers and coached a lot of writers, and one of the things they always ask me is just how do you get from an idea to a manuscript? How do you get from a manuscript to something you've edited and are happy with? How do you spot all the flaws? What do you do when you lose confidence? What do you do when you lose your way, or when you change your mind about what you want to do and everything seems rubbish? And these are problems that I've always tackled, and I realized I had a method for doing it. So I thought, well, I'll write that as a book, and people might find it quite useful. And actually, they did find it very useful. And now, if I go to writing events, I quite often bump into people who said, I got your Nail Your Novel book when I was starting, and now look, I've got these.
So is this the first book that they should start with, and then we'll go through the other ones, because
yes, that one, that's the first one. Why writers abandon books and how you can draft, fix, and finish with confidence. And it's very practical. It's just how you do things. Do this, do this, do this. It's split into tasks. So you've got tasks to do, And also it tells you what not to worry about at this
Yeah.
stage. Because something that can happen is you get overwhelmed. You think, oh, but what about this, this, and this, and this? And one of the keys to getting something finished is working out what order to do everything in and what to leave till later. So that's what this book does. It just, you follow the steps, start with an idea, follow the steps, and at the end you'll have a finished, presentable, edited book.
Okay, and let's switch in. Let's talk about this book, which we started with by accident. But
Yes.
what do people get from this particular book, which presumably is available separately?
Yes, that is Writing Plots with Drama, Depth and Heart. That focuses entirely on plot. I found that people generally tended to fall into two camps. They could either do character and not plot, or they could do plot and not character. And the various problems they had needed their own books. So this book is just focused on plot, how to create a plot. If you don't necessarily have much of a plot, but you've got lots of other stuff, ideas, concepts, settings, themes, characters, obviously, plot pitfalls that are quite easy to fall into, why we fall into them, and what to do instead. Various writing techniques like show not tell, which people talk about a lot, but actually they get very muddled about it. It has a section on show not tell and how it relates to plot. How to diagnose plot problems, how to write a beginning that's right for your book. Beginnings are so difficult to do. The beginning that you write when you first start the manuscript is usually not the beginning that should be the beginning of the book. And there are lots of ways you can arrive at the perfect beginning. So that's a complete chapter of its own. There's also endings. How should a book end? Often you might think of quite a lot of ways for a book to end, or you might be thinking, nothing seems satisfying. What will seem satisfying? So there's a whole section on how to get the ending that will satisfy your reader. There are sections on genre and non-genre as well, and where the two can overlap. So there's everything that I have seen go wrong with plot when I've been editing other people's work.
Okay, and the next book we have is the character side.
And this is the same, but for characters. Writing characters who keep readers captivated, and that's the thing that you want. You want characters who will make readers just think, "Oh, I love them. I can't bear to leave them. I've got to find out what they do." And really, don't do that because you'll ruin your life, and I really care about you. So how to do all that, and also where to get characters who will do that job for your book, especially if you're good at plot, you might not have yet got good at characters, and so you can get quite a lot of character ideas from the plot ideas that you already have. Also, there are ways to present people so that readers will have the response you want. How to get characters, how to make characters that people will love, how to make characters that people will loathe, how to make characters who will be interestingly ambivalent, kinds of characters who need to change, kinds of characters who don't need to change, because sometimes they don't. How to handle secondary characters. What is a secondary character? And again, show not tell. In relation to writing good characters, there are certain techniques that you can use to make the characters come alive that would come under the heading of the show not tell techniques. And dialogue as well, because dialogue is a way to really bring characters alive. And there are a lot of things that I've seen go wrong, and that I've been able to help writers with. So again, it's everything that I've found that people need help with characters in a book.
Okay. Well, actually, I think the only book we've got left to talk about is the companion one, which is the one you held.
Which is the one I waved. And here it is, the companion workbook. Yep. So this is a workbook version of the process book. So this actually takes you through exercises. It's got extra ones in as well, things for you to do during rest periods. Because one of the things that I recommend is that for a while you put the manuscript away because you've got to forget about it.
Yeah.
And I did cover that in the original book, but what I've done in this one is I've given you extra tasks to do while you're waiting. So you don't lose touch with the book, but you don't actually take a peek and sort of spoil the fresh eyes that you will need when you come back to it. So there are quite a lot of exercises like that to do, and ways to organize your research, and ways to keep track of other tasks that you need to do for the book but aren't ready to write yet. So it's an expanded version of the original Nail Your Novel book with extra tasks. And if you like workbooks, this is a way to write a novel with a workbook.
So are you very much on the plotter side, on the pantser versus plotter thing with writing the book then? Because to anybody who doesn't know, the pantser, people who write the seat of their pants, they write the book start begin to end, no real kind of pre-planning. Are you much more on the planning side?
Planning. I definitely love planning, but I didn't to start with. I used to think that would spoil the freshness and the creativity. And so I would just start writing for the love of expressing myself on the page and seeing what happened. But I found that I just got lost. I would write too much, but I'm very good at just thinking into the page. But I also, about that time, was learning that under the prose, there's a complete machine at work. And it's usually the book's structure and various juxtapositions, hard word to say, juxtapositions that you've made of how the characters work and which scene goes next to what. And I found that if I planned the book, I actually had far more fun, because I could set up those mechanisms that the reader wouldn't see, but they would work on the reader, like a well-timed conjuring trick. Because what you're doing as a storyteller is very much like what a conjurer does. They'll sort of do a setup and they'll say, we've got this, and if you do this and this and this, but they're also preparing lots of other stuff that you're not seeing that will then enable them to perform wonderful tricks and illusions and make you gasp in surprise. And all that is carefully planned, and storytellers do that too. And once I discovered that, I thought, planning is the way. And also, when I started ghostwriting, I used to have to submit outlines before I started, because they had to be approved by the client and the publisher. So I would have to write the detailed outline and give it to them, and then we could discuss it, because they needed to know what they were going to get. And so I've been an outliner and planner, heavy planner actually, ever since.
Okay, so we have one thing left. The dream pick, which I'm going to try and now work out how to share. They moved where the share thing was on the thing, so hopefully this will work correctly. This was and is your dream pick, which is a Rosemera DD Chaise Longue beige. So why did you pick this? The background to anybody who's not seen the show before is that I asked the guest at the end to pick one item, which is like, if money was no object, they would buy from the Amazon store. So why did you pick this particular item?
It's the perfect reading nest. That's what I need. I love a place to curl up with a book, and it can't be just a chair. A corner sofa would also be good, but a chaise longue, I mean, that is so elegant. That's what I need. I would love to be sitting there, curled up with a book, and a little table by the side with my cup of coffee, and that would be me happy for hours.
I like the way in the picture they've got a whole pile of books at the bottom as well.
Yes, you see, that's how you're meant to use it. And look at that styling. It's classical and elegant, and that's totally what I would have.
Yes, so let's get rid of that and get the old utilitarian backdrop back again. So that's gone through all of the items and all the books. I just had one little extra question, take us up to the hour, which was about the ghostwriting. How did you end up being a ghostwriter? I mean, obviously, I think for confidentiality reasons and the like, you're not allowed to tell us what you've ghostwritten. But how did you end up as a ghostwriter? I mean, were you just sort of doing general writing thing, and then you got a call somewhere to say, "Do you want to ghostwrite this book?" How does that work?
Usually it works like that. Usually someone has spotted something else you've done and they think you'd be a good fit for a project they have in mind that they need a writer for who knows that audience already and that subject. What happened with me was kind of the other way around. I'd been submitting to agents. I was trying to get an agent for my own work, but I'm married to a writer, and he does quite a bit of contract writing, including ghostwriting. And he had a project that he was ghostwriting, and it was a set of 12 paranormal romances for teenagers. And they got 12 writers to write books for this one series. And then they discovered that all 12 sounded like they were written by different people, which was a bit of a problem, because they actually hadn't briefed everybody properly about things that would make them sound like they were all written by one person. And so they asked Dave to rewrite his book, and he said to me, "You could do this really easily," and because he knew what my writing was like, and he knew what I was capable of, thank goodness. And so I wrote a book for them, and they didn't know it was by me. I handed it in, and they said, "Oh, you saved our bacon. That's exactly what we need." And then he was able to say, "Well, actually, Roz wrote it," and that was how I got in by the back door. I then became somebody who publishers could rely on to write a book to their specifications. It was all fiction that I did. I have worked on memoirs as well, but mainly I've ghostwritten fiction. And they just knew that I was somebody who could do what they needed.
Okay.
And so once you prove that, then a publisher will use you again, because what they want is someone who can deliver. So that's how I got into it. But it was so interesting, because they were books that I wouldn't necessarily have chosen to write myself. But it was a brilliant apprenticeship, because I worked with really strict editors with demands that were not necessarily the demands of the market I would eventually write for. But it was excellent for learning the trade, learning what it's like to be edited. And I mean, when you get your first editorial report, you think, "Oh my goodness, there's so much." You have to develop quite a thick skin, but also be sensitive to what the publishers want and what the ultimate reader wants as well. It was a great apprenticeship, and I'm very grateful to have done quite a lot of it. And the people I've worked with, I would not have met them otherwise, but I have had such insight into lives I wouldn't normally have been able to pry into. I could ask any question I liked, and they were people who've done things I couldn't dream of doing. And if you are interested in people and what they're like, it's a wonderful job, actually.
Yeah,
I do actually have a course in how to ghostwrite if people are interested.
Okay. Well, we won't mention that from the sending people off the site thing. But what, in terms of future books you're going to write and future projects of your own, what's the next book that you're going to write, or the next idea that you're thinking of, you've got in the works?
Well, I've got a few that are doing battle in my mind at the moment. There's another Not Quite Lost kind of book. There's another book that might be a memoir, might be fiction, and there's a fiction idea that might draw on that, or the other Not Quite Lost might draw on that. And I haven't yet figured out what comfortably goes together. So I've got to do a lot of thinking and conceptualizing. What I do have at the moment is, this is a box of notes that I'm making for the novel idea that I'm working on. I've got to the stage where I've got beyond making lists of things that might happen, because I've got too many ideas now. So one of the stages I describe in Nail or Novel is what I call the hat game. You get a load of pieces of paper with your ideas on, put them in a hat, or a pretty box that you didn't want to throw away and you thought would be useful sometime, which is what that is. And That's what I'm doing at the moment. I have ideas and I chuck them in the box, and one day I'll decide it's time to look in there and see what I've got, because then you find, oh, that could go with that, and I'd forgotten about that. And so then I can start to build a bigger picture and a richer picture. But yes, I'm working on a few things at the moment. They haven't really decided what they want to be. And part of my method really is listening to the material. Because I'm not writing to order, to what somebody else wants, I'm willing to take my time and see what the book actually needs.
Okay, well, that's interesting. Yeah, I mean, I often find that the best books, in a way, book ideas anyway, are where you've got one idea and it doesn't quite work, and then suddenly some other idea that you've got here, and then they suddenly float together and merge, and that's where the best ideas come from.
Floating together is exactly it, and that's where I often find the real excitement starts. I found that with my memories of future life, about going to another life. I realized that the musician character, she was living through music, but also when I researched what classical musicians do when they play, I realized that the manuscripts they read from are incredibly detailed. They are like an act of hypnosis. They detail what you should do every second. And not only that, they have instructions telling you how to feel while you are playing. So it would be play it lovingly. And you are doing what the composer did in his heart. And that is like channeling the soul of the composer. And once I thought of channeling the soul of the composer, I began to think of channeling the souls of people. Other lives repeating, lives coming through from past and going to the future. And then the book started to really knit together. Like you say, when you get two ideas that just seem to belong.
Yeah. Anyway, it's been great to have you on the show today. How can people find out more about you, both on Amazon and maybe elsewhere, if you say it quietly?
Yes, I have an Amazon page. You can find me there. You could find me on Twitter, if I'm allowed to mention that.
I think so.
Is that yes or no?
Yes, you can. Twitter's fine. I think,
At Roz_Morris. And you can find everything else about me by going to Twitter.
Okay, well, it's been great to have you on the show, and great to the people who've been watching. No, I have seen people watching, but they've not left any comments. So I don't know if that's a good or a bad thing. So
thank you so much, Tim. It's been really nice to do this. I've had such fun talking about these books.
Yes, it's amazing for me, actually, in a way, because I've learned about so many interesting books that I wouldn't even consider. And I generally try and read or listen to the audiobook, at least one book per show. And I'm a little bit behind at the moment, but it's really been good for book recommendations. Anyway, it's been great to have you on the show. And then,
before you go, recommend a book to me. Can you think of anything off the top of your head that you've seen what I like? What would you recommend to me?
Trouble is, most of the stuff I read is non-fiction, but I did think, have you ever read The Midnight Library? By
Matt Haig?
Yeah, Matt Haig. That's a very good book. That's probably the book I recommend. I kind of feel that it's the sort of book you would like, because there is a bit of about consciousness in it. But I get the feeling, but I may be wrong, that your book's a lot higher level. But that is a very, very good book, and it's free on Audible at the moment. So it's on there. If you've got an Audible plan, they've got a load of free books, and then you've got the credit ones, and that's one of the free books. So that would be my recommendation for you, Midnight Library by Matt Haig. So tell me how you get on. Tell me if it's good.
I will. Thank you.
Yeah, maybe on Twitter. So anyway, thanks, Roz, and thanks for everybody who's been watching.
Yeah, bye-bye.
Where I had to